James Drury. I'm about to leave on the most exciting adventure of my life so far. The second Grim Harris expedition to locate and photograph the Titanic in the North Atlantic. We're going up to take a look at a couple of modern cargo ships in the port of Houston, the Hellenic Valor and the Maritime Justice. Both ships are a couple of hundred feet shorter than the Titanic, and we're going to look at them from several different angles. This is the Maritime Justice, a typical modern workhorse of the sea. She's unloading scrap iron at Pier 44. At 650 feet, she's a little over 2/3 as long as the Titanic, but she's still a lot of ship, and she can go anywhere in the world and has. She, like the Titanic, was built to last a long time. The remains of the Titanic could be anywhere within a 650 square mile area, 1,000 miles east of Boston and 280 miles southeast of Newfoundland. She lies in 12 to 13,000 feet of water. This is the Hellenic Valor, and as you can see, she's huge. And one would think virtually unsinkable in peacetime. We're approaching the bow, and if you can imagine a gash as long as a football field, cut in her side at the waterline, starting here and ending here, you will have some idea of the mortal wound the Titanic suffered when she hit the iceberg that killed her the night of April 14, 1912. The Hellenic Valor isn't quite as big as the Titanic, but she's as long as 2 football fields, and she looks big from here. Let's see how she looks from 12,000 feet. She's steaming past Pelican Island, outward bound, the Gulf, New Orleans, New York, and Saudi Arabia. Pelican Island is over a mile long, and the ship looks like a rowboat at this altitude. Now let's see how she looks under the water. That's right, black, intense black. Black that swallows shape and color and texture. The hardest part of finding the Titanic is the lack of light. Most athletic events are judged to some extent on their degree of difficulty. The events we think of as adventures are judged and enjoyed the same way. The climbing of Mount Everest, the conquest of space, the circumnavigation of the globe, all were adventures because of their difficulty. The search for the Titanic is an adventure. We sailed June 28th from Massachusetts aboard the Texas A&M research vessel, the Gyre. There were 37 people aboard, 31 in the scientific party, including our film unit, and 6 in the ship's crew. Everything looks routine, but nothing ever is on a modern ocean research vessel. The most valuable and precious thing is time. The Gyre had come into port to change the wire, the coaxial cable, 25,000 feet long, that is our lifeline of discovery from the ship to our underwater detection devices and our video camera vehicle. The scientific team, already aboard, would be engaged in the search for the Titanic. But first we had to hitchhike with them while they completed one segment of the ongoing Hebel project, which is a worldwide search for deep ocean bottom free from current and sediment drift. The second red dot is the Hebel site, located here, and the third is the Titanic location. The time was well spent for those of us who had not been involved in undersea exploration before. And all of us had our chance to fly the deep tow vehicle at 10 to 12,000 foot depths and take still pictures of the ocean bottom. I remember the first time I saw the Gyre. She was in dry dock in Houston for repairs. With her screws and rudder 10 feet off the floor, she was about as unglamorous a ship as I'd ever seen. 180 feet of ugly brute strength. I fell in love with her right off. This is a very special trip with some very special people. It's not your average Staten Island ferry boat ride. You can see it in the brightness and the quickness of everyone aboard. They know that they have the best chance yet of solving the mystery of the Titanic. And they are at play in the fields of the Lord with the best set of electric trains anybody ever had. You'll meet all of those aboard as we go along, but I need to say a word about some of them. To begin with, this is a very young group. Youth is not a time of life, it's a state of mind. Youth means a temperamental predominance of courage over timidity, of the appetite for adventure over the love of ease. Nobody grows old by merely living a number of years. We grow old when we have more old memories than young dreams. Dr. Fred Speece, Scripps Institution of Oceanography. It's been worth the whole trip to get to know this genial, gentle, brilliant man. Dr. Bill Ryan, Lamont Doherty Geological Observatory. Friendly, interested, curious, doer of impossible things. They and their staffs are the best in their field. Captain Don Armand of the research vessel Gyre, Texas A&M University. Man of the sea, in love with the sea. Mike Harris, expedition leader, dreamer with a dream. A man with the patience of Job and the guts to find a way to make the dream come true. A special, quiet hero, Mark Olson, graduate student at Scripps. A young genius who could fabricate a part that couldn't be fabricated and that was not even in his field. Dr. Carl Lowenstein, computer expert, who knows everything. And of course, Jack Grimm, a scientist, a seeker, a gambler, a self-made man in every way. He says he never grew up. He says he's looking for the Titanic because he wants to find it. He says he's at war with the North Atlantic, and I believe him. He makes it all possible. It's a better world because he lives in it. The Scripps Deep Tow is a remarkable device. It is capable of taking magnetometer readings, side scan, forward, and vertical sonar readings at the same time. In another mode, it can take still pictures 20 feet off the bottom at 12,000 feet and send a real-time television image up the coaxial cable to a series of TV monitors in the lab aboard ship. So we can see the terrain we have just photographed while it continues to take sonar readings in all directions. It also carries a set of 4 plankton sample nets that can be opened and closed at specific depths to gather the microscopic sea life for comparative analysis, as Mark Olson is doing here. While these functions are in operation, it also receives a series of signals from the transponders on the bottom and sends them up the cable to the onboard computer, which stores this information in its memory bank so that we can relocate a particular area where any one of its functions reveals something of interest. Unfortunately, the cable can only carry a finite number of transmissions, so we cannot, for example, take pictures of the bottom and magnetometer readings at the same time.
Okay, maybe stop, skip, sit if we don't know. We haven't verified that it's being heard.
"6:35 a.m. The sun is up, dead ahead. Oh my God, the unforgiving sea. The barometer on the bridge is falling radically, as if the North Atlantic were stretching and yawning, opening her jaws and showing us a glimpse of her white fangs. Great black leopard that she is. And she has barely raised her head as yet. As we leave the Hebel location to proceed to the Titanic area, we must recover our transponders. These devices are dropped over the side and settled to the bottom, forming a grid of reference points or signposts so that we can tell where our deep tow is at any given time and continuously store that information. In good weather or bad, as we see here, the transponder will pop to the surface at a preset time when a thin steel wire is burned through electrically and releases the weight which keeps the device on the bottom. They also can be brought up at will.
That was it easy. 180 pounds, one ass.
This device and the information we receive from it is at the central core of the purpose and accomplishment of our search. That being, the ability to return our sensors or cameras to within 500 feet on the ocean floor of any spot where we have previously discovered some evidence of the Titanic.
Yes, sir, I got a long one. One long one. How long?
The T-square navigation station, so named because of its function, recording the dimensions of our search, feeding them into the computer, and then automatically plotting them on the master chart, is essential to the operation. Also, the electronics command center, at which instructions are given to deep tow and modes of operation are changed, is always manned and monitored.
We have 14 sonar targets that were found.
While we are underway between locations, we have time to reflect on, discuss, and illustrate our mission and learn. Always learn.
Area that came up with 14 different sonar targets, of which 6 are high priority, and out of those 6 there are 3 that they seem to stand out as exceptional. Those are targets 1, 10, and 13.
What we do first would be get in there and establish our navigational base.
I'll put the
So
transponders
the
in.
transponders will be in there, and then when we get the magnetic signature, we'll have a place we can return to for pictures.
How does a magnetometer work physically? Does it send a signal to the transponder and then to the ship, or does it send a signal directly to the
Well, the
ship?
magnetometer is mounted on the same fish as the side-looking sonar and everything, and that fish does send signals out to the transponders, and they come back to the tow body and up the wire to the
But
to the ship.
how do you differentiate when you find a piece of metal? That's something that I've never
Well,
understood.
a piece of iron will distort the Earth's magnetic field, change its strength. So all you're doing with the magnetometer is continuously measuring the strength of the Earth's magnetic field from one point to another.
You then see that on the readouts in
That's
the
right.
lab?
Yes, in real time in the lab.
So when you see an anomaly there, you will know.
We sure will.
Well, that's wonderful.
She's what you call a wet workboat. When she takes the sea, it flows out her fantail and into her fantail. The winch equipment is up off the deck a bit. The men sometimes work in water up to their waist. But she's gallant, and she serves us well, like a faithful Labrador retriever. She wants so much to please.
At last, we are in the Titanic area and launching our first transponder. This is much more complex than the recovery because we must launch at the exact time that our radio communications with the bridge tells us we have an exact satellite fix of the ship relative to its position on the surface. So we will know where the transponders are relative to the ship and the deep tow on the bottom. The exact amount of cable between the ship and the deep tow is monitored as well, giving us one more point of reference. Each time a transponder is launched, the process is repeated. We are literally bugging the ocean floor, and we have to know where the bugs are.
Okay, you guys, they cannot verify that they don't drop the anchor yet.
The animation illustrates how the transponders work. They send a signal to the deep tow, which travels in milliseconds up the coaxial cable and is recorded in the lab. By cross-referencing these signals, we can literally see in the dark and follow our deep tow's progress exactly as it searches along the bottom. Launching the deep tow takes all hands and the cook. The device is out of harm's way once it is in the water, but each launch and recovery is done much like two porcupines making love, slowly and carefully. Each of the people we see is a scientist with a specific area of responsibility. Once launched, the deep tow takes about 3 hours to descend to its down position and about 6 hours to recover. All the delicate instruments in this package are vulnerable to damage if the deep tow is bashed into the fantail or anything else in its way. Once in the water, the skids and armor protect the instruments very well, even from an accidental contact with the bottom. While we wait for deep tow to descend and start searching the bottom, we look at the architectural drawings of the Titanic, copies of which we have courtesy of artist Ken Marshall, a noted Titanic historian.
Here is going to be different.
Jack, show us where that purser's office is that you're always talking about.
Well, men, first you got to recognize the fact that we're taking a voyage into history, and that's just what it is. It's an unprecedented second trip. We've been given a reprieve. We're going back to find it this time. Hopefully we can find the hull basically intact, sitting on its keel on the bottom of the ocean in some 12,000 to 13,000 feet of water.
Targets we've got looks like it.
The area we're interested in is this area where we found the 14 targets last year,
Yeah.
of which there are 6 high priority. There are 2 or 3 that are outstanding targets, and we will go back to those targets and map them in detail, and hopefully set some new oceanic records in the process of filming it. Hopefully we can find the wreck and gain access to the purser's office. It's my film. If I want to talk on and on and on, I think I will.
Well, anyway, where's the money at?
This recorder is the fish flyer's recorder, and this dark line along here gives you an indication of how far off the bottom the fish is flying, our towed vehicle. And right now we're flying at a height of 60 fathoms off the bottom. And the object is to try to keep the line there as smooth as we can to keep the side scan records in good shape.
The animation shows us how the deep tow sonar works. Radar, of course, uses a radio signal to bounce a beam off an object of different density from its surroundings. Radio signals dissipate rapidly underwater. So sonar uses an acoustical signal which reaches out a certain distance in a certain time, and by measuring the time the signal takes to return, paints a computerized acoustical image of the bottom.
There's a club in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that caters to the worldwide fraternity of sports fishermen and holds tournaments several times each year that are taken very seriously by the participants. These men, and a few women, spend vast amounts of time and money in the pursuit of fighting fish, and their boats are truly marvelous in every way. They contain the very finest seagoing gear, navigation, fishing tackle money can buy. I've known a few of these folks over the years, and if they realized how outdone they are by the rigging on the gyre, they'd be green with envy. Maybe I've always been green with envy of them, because I feel like the cat that swallowed the canary. We have on board this ship a set of fishing tackle with 20,000 feet of line, a 2,000-pound lure with all kinds of exotic submarine detection equipment. And we're trying to hook a 46,000-ton fish that's 882 feet long in 12,000 feet of water. The Titanic. Let's see him top that.
And notice how flat it is on either side once you get past the impression of the canyon wall. Both places, very flat from there on out.
Yeah, we just went over, we were going over really that first target, number 6, which wasn't a very high priority. And the magnetometer didn't show anything, so...
There was no magnetic anomalies.
This one doesn't look like it's a Titanic.
That's right, and the fish flew within a few hundred feet of it, so it appears to eliminate it as far as it being a metallic object or the hull of a vessel.
Yeah, but number 13, that's the one we're looking at next.
Number 13's coming up next in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Well, it says here that it's going to draw a circle. Plotter over there. All right, we got an X plus or this and Y plus.
Carl Lowenstein is in charge of all computer operations aboard ship. All the information we receive is stored and constantly reevaluated so that Carl can massage it into permanent files that are used anytime we need to return to a spot where a specific piece of information was recorded. We don't dwell on ghosts in the daytime very much, but on the bridge watch as night closes in, I find my thoughts returning often to the night of April 14th, 1912, when the confusion and complacency following the collision with the iceberg turned to fear and horror in the minds of those aboard the Titanic as they faced their doom. I suspect we can all hear those voices. I know I can.
Good Lord, what a morning. Thank God for the 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. winch watch. I went out in total darkness, and then came the morning star, and then the prettiest sunrise I've ever seen. It came to me as the sky brightened, that the wisps of cloud changing color were reflections on a giant screen that matched the transponder tracks, the navigation station, and the lab below. I knew we were being guided with all the surety in the universe. One of the finest things about the race of man is its overwhelming ability to love its fellow man. Nearly all heroism in war and peace is the result of one human being reaching out to help another. We can't stand by and see anyone in trouble. When the Titanic went down, more than 1,500 people died, and it shocked the human race. The disaster broke the hearts of millions upon millions of people all over the world, people who had no friends or relatives aboard. It was as if everyone had lost a loved one. Through the years, that bittersweet sadness has remained in us. And there's always been a secret longing in the hearts of people that they could lay that universal grief to rest. It's been 69 years, but mankind needs to find the Titanic as a salute of all the life that was lost that night. A kind of last farewell to show them they're not forgotten. And find them we will. The coaxial cable that was replaced just before we came aboard was new but faulty. The replacement is old but faulty and must be watched and bandaged all the time.
Yeah, that's the target, number 13.
We're on 13 right now.
Yeah, it's the sonar target that we had from last summer. And this is really one of our number one priority targets. And that's it right there.
These would be shadows, right, Mike?
Yeah, that should represent, if this is the Titanic, that black mark should represent the Titanic. And this shadow is supposedly the outline of that particular object. So
what's the scale here on this on this particular thing we're looking at?
Well, this is roughly 900 feet long, and the Titanic was 882. So it's pretty close, and it shows a relief, I think, of 100 and some feet.
It's about 400 feet per square here, something like that.
Yeah, I guess so. So we're chugging along down this canyon, and for the next 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to be by this with the magnetometer, and it should show up over there on a scale if that's if there's any metal associated with this particular target.
Vast difference from last year, I guess, when you didn't know whether it was metal or not.
Yeah, we didn't have a magnetometer yet.
We have just passed target 13, one of our top priority targets, and there has been no change in the Earth's magnetic field. 13 is a dry hole, so we're heading up the line.
Almost even there.
Everyone aboard relaxes and passes the time on the long stretches between targets in different ways. Jack and some of the men play poker. I wander the ship and remember things.
Good chance of quarter board, yeah.
One of my earliest memories of the things around me was of my dad's fishing reel. It was nickel plated and had green marbleized ends and a level wind in front. Every time I pull the winch watch, I think of that reel, because it's just like our winch spool and it reminds me so much of Dad. There's a picture on the wall at the home ranch in Oregon of him and a giant trout he caught with that reel, and it pleases me to think of how excited he'd be about this adventure. He did a lot of things I've only heard tales about, but I know he once swam from Long Island to Sandy Hook, and I know he fished with the Indians in the Northwest. His values are in me, so I know how much it would have pleased him. And I feel his presence often, and take joy from the memory of his smile.
Meanwhile, nothing is working. It's possible the magnetometer is out of range or heavy seas are affecting it. We are passing target after target of the 14 plotted by last year's expedition and getting no change in the Earth's magnetic field. A change would, of course, indicate the presence of metal or a mineral deposit. We will eventually discover a 200,000-pound magnetic anomaly spread along 1.5 miles of the edge of Titanic Canyon. Last year, the sonar targets that were located were mainly in the vicinity of a canyon on the ocean floor, 15 miles long and 2 miles wide, that the scientists named Titanic Canyon. Since we can't take pictures of the bottom and operate the magnetometer at the same time, the decision is made to take pictures in hopes of finding some debris. The days race by, and it feels like sitting in traffic in a New York taxi with the meter running.
And it stirs up the dust, the sediment that's on the bottom. And it also hangs on the strobe and makes a cloudy picture if you take another one right away. So you got to kind of run it through the water for a ways and clean everything out.
We've also got the constraint here that we've only got 4,960 meters of wire that we can use, which means that we've got to be able to control the speed of the ship in such a way that we keep the fish within 5 fathoms of the bottom, and that we're able to control the altitude of the fish by controlling the speed of the ship. We got about 20 knots of wind today right off the port beam, which is making the ship roll a lot, and which is making the strobe bounce up and down along the bottom. Even though we have 4,800 meters of wire out, the wire essentially is stiff and it doesn't stretch at all. And every time the ship goes up and down, the fish and the strobe go up and down with it.
It takes about 6 hours to reel in 20,000 feet of wire, and no one can control the weather when it's done. The North Atlantic is known by mariners everywhere as the world's wettest ocean. On this particular day, we had 15-foot seas, and it rained so hard it flattened the water out. Fresh water is lighter than salt water and calms the sea by filling in the troughs between the waves. Deep Tow carries 3 35mm cameras in pressure-proof housings that each have a 3,200 frame magazine. In order to develop our film, we have to recover Deep Tow, unload and reload the magazines, and make another launch. We are using a special fast film designed by Kodak for use in limited light, and it is custom packed for the underwater cameras. Just as we started to unload the cameras, the sun came out, so Dr. Spies is giving Mark Olson some shade. The scientists are excited about the potential for study of undersea life in the underwater haven the wreck of the Titanic may provide. In the course of 69 years, whole chains of life may have been allowed to evolve and prosper. You can examine mile upon square mile of deep ocean floor and never see 2 individuals of the same species. The Titanic could contain whole colonies. Mark makes for the dark room, and we have pictures coming up.
Well, that's what Skip and I were talking about. Is it the final termination?
Do you have your screening unit in, or can you come closer, over?
We are about to relaunch deep tow when the winch motor breaks and can't be fixed.
Although I just heard that we got our the trawl wire up with the deep tow on it, and we had the motor out and took the couplings off and all that.
A replacement part is located and hand-carried on a commercial plane from New Jersey to Cape Race, Newfoundland. Plans are made for the gyre to steam north for 18 hours and rendezvous with an airdrop from a private plane 200 miles south of Cape Race. An iffy proposition at best, but at this point we have no choice.
Adamant's about a 200-mile limit. Is that a possibility, or is that absolutely no-go? Over.
I think the best we could do is make 200 miles from St. John's. Over.
What do we got?
Well, this appears to be a possible fossilized vertebrae. See the little vertebrae sticking out back here. And then there's also, someone suggested this might be a skull here. It's certainly something circular. It may be an eye socket. This one is a very interesting photograph.
As we examine the prints, one thing becomes clear, if it wasn't clear already. The technology of deep tow is great. We can photograph the Titanic in minute detail once we find it. We are hoping for man-made objects, but find very few. A bucket, a pulley with a hook, a few fish. Over 3,000 merchant ships were sunk in the North Atlantic during World War II by submarines, and we found very little evidence of anything. The ocean is so vast, and we have so little time. We finally get a lucky break. Mark manages to make the part that puts us back in business, and it's a good thing because the airdrop is canceled due to bad weather, and we head south one more time. Back on location, we launch the deep tow for the last time on this trip. We have one more chance to use the magnetometer, or one last chance for black and white photography before our time is up. We have a new mechanical problem. The winch motor is working, but the small crane on the fantail has lost its clutch and can no longer power around with its load. We have to let it swing with the roll of the ship and put on the brakes until it swings again to our advantage.
Yeah, let me show you something. Remember that note I was telling you about I had
Oh,
from
yeah.
somebody on the Titanic?
Where did you get that again?
Well, you know, last year we got an awful lot of publicity and on television and so forth, and some lady must have seen us, and she contacted somebody who knew me, and Nick Petrick, the cinematographer, and he got in touch with me. And it was kind of funny. She said, "I'm not going to live forever." She said, "You better come film because I've got a note from somebody on the Titanic."
Huh.
So we went over and filmed her, and
Where was she located?
She was over in St. Petersburg, but the story was her mother was up in Maine or somewhere like that, and the year after the Titanic sank, she was walking on the beach, found this particular note in a champagne bottle. She broke the champagne bottle open, got the note out, and they've had it in their family for, what, 70 years now. And she didn't think a thing about it until our expedition to find the Titanic.
And
So
it
it's
says, our ship is lost, all hopes of being saved is abandoned, Jack Stewart, ill-fated Titanic.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is we looked up in the records and found out there was a Jack Stewart who was a steward on the Titanic.
What do we extended? Fire it back up again. Extended boards are down here.
We came up yesterday morning on this track. It was up through here. It's along like this. Our idea was to drive through these magnetic anomalies, taking pictures. All right, now the other point. How much time do we have left to run 2 tracks and still get our the television camera working on the bottom?
If you make a little time chart, let's say this is midnight. This is the 16th, which is where we are now, and this is the 17th, and then we have midnight on the 18th. We've got to leave, if we take the USGS offer of an extra day, we have to leave the area, according to Don, Armand right there at the end of at midnight on the 18th.
Saturday night.
Saturday midnight. In this time interval, we'll have about 14 hours that we can put the TV down and navigate against the topography and get ourselves some pictures in the canyon and up on the flat in this vicinity.
Mark Olson and Anita Brosius are putting the final touches on the pressure-proof housings for the color video camera and recorder. Color video has been taken at much greater depths through the porthole of a bathysphere. But as far as we know, no one has ever used color video in an unmanned vehicle at 12,000 feet before, traveling at 6 feet off the bottom. It will prove to be the most exciting venture of the entire expedition. We wanted some underwater footage of the last deep tow recovery, so our camera crew prepared to go under behind the fantail. It seems like a routine event, but there is nothing routine about it. Anytime you put people in the water, you compound your problems. Every diver dreads a number of things. One of them is bad air. Bad air is usually caused by breathing a scuba tank dry or nearly empty, which allows rust to form on the inner wall of the tank. We never got the footage we wanted, and we came close to a tragedy. Suddenly, Jack Cosgrove was in trouble. Jack is an experienced underwater cameraman and diver with hundreds of successful dives behind him. But he had some bad air in his scuba tank, and he almost drowned. Only the quick thinking of Bobby Blanco saved him. The North Atlantic is a rough place to dive, even in the summertime, and Jack dodged a moving bullet. Mark Olson is furious at the bad air, and Jack is brought back aboard the gyre as the deep tow is recovered for the last time. We are launching the video camera sled for its first, last, and only run of the trip. This particular configuration has never been used before, and Dr. Bill Ryan looks on as anxiously as any expectant father in a hospital waiting room. The plan is to make a run from the position where the lifeboats were recovered, north to the CQD or last SOS position of the Titanic, using a constantly shining light as opposed to the strobe light on the deep tow. These lights, like a set of truck headlights, are encased in pressure-proof housings along with their batteries and will give better illumination than we have had so far. This is a last-ditch attempt to recover some physical evidence of the Titanic, at least for this trip, and everyone knows it and says a silent prayer.
The bottom here has got some roughness of about 20 feet or so.
Are we now basically over the canyon area that we've been surveying for the last couple of weeks?
We're on the lip of the south wall of the canyon, and probably in about 10-15 minutes we're going to ascend down that very steep wall onto the canyon floor.
Is that anywhere close to the large magnetic anomaly that we've been over several times?
We will cross the eastern part of that magnetic anomaly, the place where the anomaly is the most narrow and highest amplitude, and then we will continue to the in the direction of where the Titanic claimed that she sent her distress signal or CQD position.
Well, isn't this extremely unusual and new process to put color video in this depth of water?
Color video flying in a remote vehicle in this depth, I'm not sure it's a first, but it could very well be a first. Color video has been in the deep ocean in submersibles pointed out the porthole, but color video all by itself, what we call an autonomous situation, this might be a first.
The sea is always referred to as a woman, and there are reasons for that beyond number. I think we all know that we're here as her guests, and are lucky to be tolerated. She has so many faces and moods that we can never know enough about her to stay ahead. She guards her secrets well. We are forced to ask again. And so we chip and paint our ships, and polish our gear, and invent new things to please her with our cleverness. And once in a great while, she's easy, but not for long. Mike Harris wanted to find the Titanic, and he told Jack Grimm, and Jack told the rest of us, and we all tried our best. Hemingway wrote, "There are some things that cannot be learned quickly, and time, which is all we have, must be paid heavily for their acquiring. They are the very simplest things, but because it takes a man's life to know them, the little new that each man gets from life is very costly, and the only heritage he has to leave." We are recovering the video sled, which will be our last recovery of this trip, and everyone is anxious to get a look at the footage. Everyone who could gathered in the lounge to watch the video, like a bunch of kids around a Christmas tree when the magic moment comes to open presents. What we were seeing was greeted with great enthusiasm, even though the first few frames were nothing but flat bottom and a few fish and rocks.
Look at that. Another good one.
Well, Bill, that's what we need the shock cord for, right? I'm really impressed with the way Bill this.
Oh, look, that was something moved out. Yeah.
What was that? It was dust.
No, it didn't hit the bottom.
Something stirred up.
That's something stirred up and split. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was.
Nope, there's another fish. Upper right, see it? Beg pardon. Brain lock of some kind.
It's a nice shot there, it is.
Oh, there's something there. Look! Oh,
And there it was, a few frames of videotape we would look at again and again. Its immediate impression caught the eye and froze the mind. A propeller blade from a large ship. But the scientific method is cautious by definition, and much discussion, pro and con, took place.
Depending on the angle, the top would look sharp, though, wouldn't it?
It has to look sharp,
Yeah.
or else it's not pellet.
I thought it looked more like one single bladed propeller.
Yes.
Because the rear blades are three real propellers. The outboard propellers are three bladed propellers. It looks like the blades are attached separately in the drawings I looked at. And it seems conceivable.
It looks like it's just one blade.
Right. It looks like, to me, like it's more like the blade's laying more flat on the bottom. Like this, and you're coming over the front edge this way. It looks like it's sharp this way. We're running along the leading edge of the blade, rather than sticking up at some angle of being buried in the mud.
Jack, let's look at it again.
Okay.
There it is, man. Look at that. See the curvature of it? Now watch.
The consensus ruled out Mark Olson's theory that the blade was laying flat on the bottom. Painstaking measurements estimate the blade to be between 8 and 10 feet tall and place it 16 to 20 feet off the bottom. As we look at this artist's rendering of the hull, we see the course the camera sled probably took as it passed over the blade. All the way back to Boston, the debate continued. Whether the blade we see in this still picture taken from the videotape is the right size and shape to belong to the Titanic. We could not know and did not know until we got home to Texas, that on Jack Grimm's desk was this picture of two commercial divers from Scotland, Mr. Simon Martin and Mr. Alec Crawford, with a propeller blade from the Oceanic. This ship, of similar vintage and size in relation to the Titanic, was wrecked off the coast of Scotland 60 years ago, and the similarities between the two pictures speak for themselves. So much so that plans are underway to reactivate the Illuminaut, Reynolds Aluminum's deep-diving submarine, and return once more to the old gray Widowmaker and dive on the Titanic.